Let's take some time to talk about a company that I think hasn't been mentioned in the news nearly enough. Monsanto. They've been ranked the #1 most unethical company in the world. And there's a very good reason why they are ranked #1. But before we start talking about why Monsanto is such an unethical company, let's start with GMOs. GMO stands for Genetically Modified Organism. Literally, scientists will go in and splice new DNA into plants to make them resistant to pesticides that farmers have to use to keep bugs off their crops. The FDA first approved GMOs in 1980, and by 1999 there were 100 million acres of GMO crops worldwide. GMO crops were doing great until around 2003, when new pests that were resistant to the pesticides started to emerge. It was at this point when Monsanto really stepped into the picture. Today, Monsanto is a biotech giant. They manufacture some of the strongest pesticides used in the country. They were also one of the first companies to attempt to genetically modify seeds. And of course, these seeds are the only seeds on the market that are made to resist their patented pesticides. However, this cornering of the GMO seed market isn't the first shady thing Monsanto has done. They've produced a lot of other products in the past. To name a few, Agent Orange, PCBs, and bovine growth hormones. In addition to manufacturing quite a few questionable products, Monsanto has also engaged in some very shady practices. One of the most outrageous was the FDA's study on Monsanto's bovine growth hormones. Whenever a company like Monsanto begins using these kinds of hormones, it's the FDA's job to run tests and see if it's safe for human digestion. The only problem is that when Monsanto's growth hormones were submitted to the FDA, a report was never released. Ever. Which led many people to assume that Monsanto paid off the FDA to not release the study. Monsanto has also made other efforts to stop their bovine growth hormones from being banned. For example, a Fox News reporter had planned to release a story on the air. However, Monsanto caught wind of the story, contacted the news agency, got it pulled, and had the reporter fired. Monsanto also made very shady moves with its PCB production. For example, in 1966, the managers at a Monsanto plant discovered that fish submerged in a creek near their plant turned belly up within 10 seconds, spurting blood and shedding skin, and as if dunked into boiling water, and told no one. 3 years later, they found fish in another creek with 7,500 times the legal PCB level. And once again, Monsanto told no one. Monsanto's dumping completely destroyed the rivers and the small town that surrounded it. To this day, the levels of pollution in the river are extremely high and deathly poisonous. And although they've been let off the hook for aiding the cleanup effort, Monsanto has still never apologized for what they did. Today, Monsanto has switched from polluting rivers to suing small farmers. Monsanto sues on average about 500 small farmers per year for patent infringement. Unfortunately, they can do this because they own patents on 95% of all GMO crops used in America. Monsanto demands that farmers pay a yearly fee for using their seeds. They tell farmers that they can't reuse seeds from the previous harvest, like farmers have been doing since the very beginning of farming. They take legal action against anyone who even attempts to reuse their seeds without paying. Monsanto even brought one small farmer to court because they found their seeds in his fields after they had blown off a truck and grew there without his knowledge. Monsanto has been using its patents for the past few years to exploit small farmers, and their tactics have been called a threat to biodiversity or biopiracy. It is without a doubt that Monsanto should no longer be allowed to carry out business the way they do.
created using Powtoon.